President Tinubu is a sagacious politician, and every politician is selfish one way or the other. And while we are even debating and paying too much attention on e-transmission as if it's a game changer, there are other provisions in that law which many people are not talking about. Let me give you this instance. Did you know, and there is nothing that Tinubu would do that anybody will hang him. It took 6 alterations before Buhari signed the last one. Did you know that? No. Now, we have had about 5 alterations of the Constitution since 1999. Did you know that?
Yes.
Then we have had about, we have 2001 Electoral Act, which was withdrawn in 2002. Then we have 2006. Then we have 2010. Then we have 2022. Now, we don't know whether it's 2022 altered or 2026 that we have
running with.
And let me also say this, since we are discussing politics, I believe National Assembly was being mischievous.
I understand what you're saying. It's a quagmire because even now, if issues come up based on this Electoral Act and the Supreme Court has to rely on the Constitution, it's almost like whatever the Electoral Act did does not exist before the law.
And you know, in the hierarchy of law, the Constitution comes first.
Highest, yes. So
even when you have altered the Electoral Act, their lordship will be looking at consequential alteration. So
it is the mother of all laws.
Of course, Constitution is the mother of all laws.
The US is adding more troops to Nigeria. About 200 soldiers are due to come to Nigeria. And, this time we know they are coming. It's not a situation of coming through backdoor, even though people have also said maybe there are more than 200 people that may come at the end of the day. Where are they coming to?
You see, unfortunately for Nigeria, you cannot cherry pick. Because he who is down does not fear fall. We do not have the technological prowess to deal with our insecurity. We are talking of sovereignty. We are talking of what other things have I heard people saying?
Yeah, well, sovereignty, the idea of territorial invasion,
territorial integrity, and all of that. It's only people who can secure their borders that will be worried about territorial integrity. The question we should ask is: should Nigeria turn down that offer?
Why shouldn't we have used mercenaries at some point?
This podcast is brought to you by the Volume Pod in association with the Cable NG, Albarka Radio, 97.5 FM, and Diazu Development.
This is Volume with FemiDlive. It's a good week. It's a good time. And yes, everything that it takes to build up the political environment is getting more intense than before. There's price to be paid, and there are those who will be given up as the prize. Well, that's something sad, but yet it's the reality of what we deal with. My guest today is Mr. Jide Ojo. He's an experienced political analyst. In fact, he's one of the most sought-after political analysts in Nigeria. His ideas and his vision for what should be done in governance have been adopted by many strategic thinkers and progressive people who want to make sense of what they represent for the people. For many interesting times, we find people who think otherwise or who are not able to deliver. And so they resort to meeting with people like Mr. Jide Ojo to provide perspective on many complicated subjects. And we're about to cover some of them on the show. Let's start. Welcome, sir, to the show.
It's my pleasure, Femi.
I've never really settled on what intro to use for you. So you notice that every time I come up with different words.
Thanks for the introduction. You made it look like someone in a borrowed room. Because I don't know whether I hold that kind of...
But it is true.
Whether I hold that kind of esteemed position in Nigerian politics.
It is true. You've written for Punch for how many years? Your media appearances, your Facebook following. Those are some of the thoughts that fundamentally a lot of people use to decide on the reality around some of the things that they see. So you're well deserving of the accolades. I must say that for true.
Even at the risk of sounding immodest, I appreciate God for the grace. It's a grace. We started way back 36 years ago. And it was just like a child's play, playing... Just got passionate about Nigeria, how things should be done. I recall writing for the Punch. Not the Punch, Daily Sketch in Ibadan, my first piece was published on October 12, 1990. And it
Wow.
was about Iwokwin paper mill in Ogun State, which has got millions of naira, but yet abandoned. And I was looking at it from the prism of how it affects education and the news media, because I don't know whether the situation has changed now, but then you have to import newsprint, all the newspaper, and it's not like now though, that you have digital newspapers. Everything is in print, and they have to import with forex, and then the textbooks are expensive because they have to be imported. So Iwokwin paper mill in Ogun State was cited, and after spending about 300 million at that time, the thing was abandoned. So it got featured on one TV station, and I picked it up and wrote about it and said, complete Iwokwin paper mill. That was my first experience. That was my first byline, October 12, 1990. And since then, by and large, it's become something in my DNA that, like, now, working for myself has now created more space to take on media interventions and interviews. So on the average, I do 3-4 on the daily basis.
And one thing quite unique about what you do is that I know people who are excellent when it comes to seeing problems, but I've also seen you take it to the next level, see the problem, and provide possible solution, even to many difficult subjects that you've covered over the years. So is there any go-to mechanism you've developed over the years on how to arrive at that?
Well, for me, writing, I write from the prism of developmental media. You understand? So it's not media for criticism, media for activism, or media for development. So what are you bringing to the table? You said there is not bad. The government is doing badly in insecurity, in education, in health, in governance. So what are you offering as solution? You have to have solution. And maybe it rubs off on the work I do as a development consultant, because by virtue of my training, you are not supposed to see issues from one side of the coin. There are always two sides to the coin. So it has always been in me that I want to use that as a USP, unique selling point. Now, anybody that picks up my piece will find solution even when I'm highlighting the challenges. Yeah. So it's always been something I mainstream, deliberately mainstream into my writing. And even when I speak on media, on broadcast media, even when you don't ask me, I deliberately want to say, this is my own suggestion on the way forward. It's not left for you to take or not to take it. I may well be wrong with my suggestion. I never believe that I'm always right, that there is no superior argument to whatever I proffer. For instance, on this e-transmission of election results and all of that, some of my colleagues in civil society march on the National Assembly insisting, it has to be electronic, otherwise the election will be rigged. I took it. In fact, on Silverbed, was it last week? Silverbed TV, the host, the anchors were disagreeing with me, because I said we need to take a cautious approach to solving this challenge so that you don't hurt yourself, you don't cut your nose to spite your face. When they were like, Mr. Ojo, why will you say what the Senate is doing is okay? And
is it okay? Let me
I wasn't
push
saying
back.
It's okay. The point I was coming from is that there must be safeguard. Because I've done my research and I know there's no single country in the world where there is 100% electronic transmission without paper trail, without a fallback position. And that's my position. That has been my position all along. That you cannot, this issue did not exterminate or abolish manual collation. The whole argument, the entire argument stems from the fact that we need electronic transmission as a kind of checks and balance on the manual, because we believe in election cycle that the weakest link in the value chain of election result management is collation.
Yes.
So that's when you can manipulate,
The
particularly when
results.
you are moving from collation point A to point B and all of that. But I agree. But in saying that you want to do e-transmission, the caution I was saying is what amounts to real time. So if you say insist, it has to be done in real time. That was the argument before the Senate eventually said where there is a failure, then you resort to manual. So I said, what you need to define real time, because when you get to the judiciary, as emotive as election is, their lordship will say, okay, you didn't tell us what real time is. Is it 5 hours after the election, 10 hours, 1 day after the election? Would that still be okay? Or would 2 days, 3 days be okay as a real time? So, because you cannot be importing meaning. Every word has connotative and denotative
In
meaning.
law.
So if you now say, oh, election has to be uploaded in real time, and you don't specify what real time means, then INEC, with the best of intention, I've worked with INEC, I've been a consultant to INEC, and I'm not in any way holding brief for them that they are deliberately going to sabotage the election. But the bottom line is that we are in a political environment where politicians are very desperate and they want to win at all costs. And sometimes where they are waiting for you is at that level of litigation.
Before we go into the level of litigation, which I agree with you that every word you throw in there always end up with a meaning when it comes to courts, whether you're talking about FCT, Abuja is FCT or not FCT, which is one thing that did come down to legal interpretation down the road. There's also the perspective about what is the first kind of result that would go. Some believe that the real-time transmission should be the backup of the paper trail that, oh, we've counted, this is the result. Then the real-time or whatever digital result is being transmitted is the one that will be acknowledged as the second one. That was one thing that people were arguing about, also among the people who were there to protest in this space. Some believe that it should also be the other way around, that the real-time is the main result everybody should follow, and the paper is the fallback or is the trail path to it. What's your perspective? Should one come before the other?
Yes, one should come before the other, and the one that is acceptable and should be in the law is the manual result.
Why?
Thank you. This is the way election result management works. From polling units, and there are 176,846 polling units in Nigeria. Let me begin by saying every political party and candidate worth its salt should have a polling agent in each of those polling units. So if you are a presidential candidate, it should not be 99%. It should be 100% deployment of polling agents. You know why? The polling agent has legal backing. They can do so many things. In fact, the Electoral Act has empowered a polling agent. One, they have to be present when distribution of election materials are done, maybe from Wednesday or Thursday, when you are moving the materials from central bank to the INEC office, from INEC office to the local government, from local government to ward, from registration. The other word for ward is registration area center, RAC center. Then from there to the polling unit. So why is it important for you to have a polling agent? Because they are the whistleblower that the law has enabled you to have at each of those polling units. If you now fail, which is what happened with 90% of the candidates, they usually claim they don't have the resources to deploy fully. So you see a party running, fielding a presidential candidate, deploying polling agents in 30%, in 50%. That is not good enough. It has to be 100% because the result that they bring to you, the stamped and signed result, is tenable in court as a basis for reviewing the election process. So That's number one. They are to be present where the distribution is going. Then on the day of election, a polling agent is allowed to use his phone or her phone to film and take pictures of what happened at the polling unit. That's another level of integrity. Then he can challenge a voter from being given ballot paper if there is a reasonable suspicion that that voter is underage. He can tell the presiding officer, I know this boy, he's my neighbor, he's 16, he's not 18. Yes, his name may be on the register, but he's an underage. And, that's another power. Then the polling agent can ask for a recount. So a presiding officer, 1, 2, 5, 8, 25, say, okay, please don't record yet. I want you to recount. Oh yeah, let's follow. And have you not seen the LUP of 2023? As you are counting, they are saying 1, 2. People are following you the way you are counting. If you are a polling agent, you can ask for a recount. The law backs you to do that. Can you say about 5 things I've mentioned?
Yes.
Then from there, a polling agent will get an official copy of, even if you are 90. In fact, that's why the election management of 2019 was so tedious for INEC, because there were 91 or 92 political parties at that time. About 70-something of them fielded candidates.
Yes.
The law INEC has is that 80 to 90% of them did not deploy polling agents. Otherwise, the law says they all must get a copy. And then the police. Do you get? Mm-hmm. Now, this result that you get is not for fun, no. It's the basis by which you can challenge the outcome of that election. And that's why people don't avert their mind to what happened at the tribunal. When you go to tribunal and you allege fraud, the court, because it's a criminal allegation, and in criminal allegation, he who alleges must prove. Mm-hmm. Not just prove, you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt. Mm-hmm. You know that as well as I do. So it's not just saying, Femi, you are underage, or you are overage, or you have committed fraud. Because it's a criminal, it's not civil. It's not like husband and wife having disagreement. Okay, go and settle. Go and settle. This one, you are alleging somebody that on conviction could go to jail. You get?
Yeah.
So what the court expects you to do as somebody who stood in that election, either as a candidate or as a party, is that you must provide credible evidence. Now, which credible evidence do you have to present? Is your ballot paper. So you want to allege overvoting now, that there is overvoting. That EC8A form is what you tender. See, Oga, Beavers shows 50 accredited, 48 voted. Rather than recording 48 below, we now saw 480. So there is overvoting. And where there is overvoting, the law says zero vote for that polling unit. And that brings me to one aspect that people are not paying attention to when they are fetish about this e-transmission. That the result that you see on e-transmission, which is the EC8A form that you are uploading, is not a collation database. It's not a collation portal. They are not inputting the figures. They are inputting, what they are uploading is the EC8A form that you are supposed to get, or your agent is supposed to get at the polling unit. So what it does is just to give another layer of transparency. And this was even started by INEC way back in 2020, before the Electoral Act 2022, in Nasarawa State constituency here, very close to us. So by and large, why am I saying all of this? When people say, oh, e-transmission, they don't understand that e-transmission is not e-voting.
It is not e-voting.
And it's not e-collation.
It is not e-collation.
So,
but however, if you also recall, many of the results that happened in the last election, right, as the EC8 form was uploaded, some upside down, some sideways, some looking very awkward. People used the results that they also had from the citizens who voted pictures they took, they went to INEC portal, compared them, and in some cases saw some differentials. In some cases, they saw EC8 forms that did not belong to the polling unit that uploaded
to
there, the wrong. So you would understand the reason why people would say, well, it may not be a collation center, but it is an evidence center to say, if INEC were to play tricks, we can go to your portal and say, this is what you uploaded under this place, which is not true.
Exactly. And sincerely to the law, if there's fidelity to the law, that should not happen. The point is that for collation officer, there is also in the Electoral Act an instruction that when there is a dispute about a result, you have to check with the IReV to see what was uploaded vis-a-vis what was brought to you, and then you take a decision. Now, the point I'm making before your interjection is that what is uploaded is not final.
Yes.
And could be reviewed. Because there is even a section 65 of the Electoral Act, which has empowered the INEC to review what the returning officer, and you know the returning officer is the Oga Patapata, is the one that has the final say. In fact, before the Electoral 2022, whatever a returning officer declares stands and can only be reversed by the judiciary, by the court. Do you get? But there is now a section 65 which says, okay, INEC, if you receive petition that there was mago, as we say in local parlance, there is a hanky-panky with the result. You can review that result within 7 days. And INEC under Mahmoud Yakubu, one of the last things he did before his exit was to come up with a guideline for the review of election results. Now, I agree with those who have said, let's have a transmission, because now what it does, the salutary effect that this will have on the electoral process is that, unlike in 2023, when the Supreme Court dismissed evidence advanced from the opposition, PDP, Labour Party candidates, that IReV is not known to law. Now IReV is known to law. And what is gathered from whether the front end or the back end of IReV cannot be admitted as evidence in court. That is the good news about this IReV and e-transmission that we are talking about. But we are talking of practicality of this, that what some people are insisting, and I don't want to mention names so that people don't say, I'm making snide remark against them. What some people are pushing for is that it has to be real time. And I said, what is real time? Real time does not mean, we know we have internet connectivity. Even the reason why you don't do this virtually with people is because you don't want to take a risk of doing things that there will be internet fluctuations and glitches and itches. So you persuade us to come physically, so that it's smooth and it comes out best. But we are challenged. And let me tell you from the angle of INEC, having worked with them for over 20 years, work with them, not for them.
As a consultant, like you said.
As a consultant, is that INEC is facing exogenous challenges. You know what I mean by exogenous? That challenges that is not within their control. For instance, security is exogenous to INEC. INEC does not have its own army, does not have its own police. It relies on the police and army and soldiers that are provided by another authority. You get?
Yes.
2, does not have control of this infrastructure we are talking about. It's not it cannot order any of the service provider, telecom service provider to do anything. We've seen where INEC signed MOU with road traffic unions. You know this.
Yes.
We have come on your show in your previous life to talk about this. MOU signed and sealed, and yet on election day, you will not see those drivers. You will not see those buses. So INEC everybody will be on the TV, on radio. INEC is not here. Oh. See, this 9 o'clock. Election was supposed to, but INEC does not have full complement of vehicles to move from the rack center to the polling unit. So we have seen sabotage. And this is what I was advancing our minds to when I said, let's hurry slowly about the integration of technology. Let me share this with you. As I said, I think after one of my intervention, one lanestic, Sam Kagbo, shared his thoughts with me. And I've also seen lanestic JB Daudu, former NBA president.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go and check what he wrote on his Facebook wall about this whole issue of e-transmission and all of it. They were speaking strictly from legal point of view. That be careful what you are asking for. Because I know desperate politicians. Politicians will deliver, INEC will give, they will agree, MOU sign. A day before the election, you are to sleep at the rack center. From 6, you are moving to the polling unit. Election is to start at 8. I was in Edo, this last election in Edo. Mm-hmm. All Edo local government was where I witnessed, me and she walking by way of channels. He hosted me and Ezenwan Wagu. We were there standing for 2 hours. At 9, that's when we saw police and INEC vehicles coming to move materials for that rack center. That school also happens to be a rack center. To move to the polling, and this is out of town, out of Benin. So what happened? Sabotage from either the security agents or the road transport union. Who now tells you that desperate politicians cannot sabotage the database of INEC, the IReV portal? We have seen it time and again. Let me shock you. These are examples I've given on several media channels where I've spoken on this. In 2017, go and read this. You can fact check me. The guy, the ICT director in Kenya, I've forgotten how the Kenya Election Management Body is called. It's a 4-letter acronym. The guy was murdered on the eve of election. The ICT director, who has the code, because desperate politicians want to take him out to frustrate the deployment of technology.
I heard about that incident.
2 people were killed, himself and a lady that were in their vehicle. Nobody knew. I don't know whether they fished out the killer of that man. That's a desperate... This is not Nigeria. I'm talking of... Then, US 2020 election. Up till tomorrow, as Donald Trump admitted that he lost credibly to Joe Biden. That's a democracy of over 250 years. That election dispute has become a stain. Do you know how many people died in the invasion of the Congress, US Congress, on January, was it January 20 or January what? The day VP
I remember the call. It lasted days, actually.
You know, about 7 or 6 people died. And all of that has been pardoned by Donald Trump anyway.
Glass shattering.
Yeah. We all saw it. It's there in the... What prompted that? Election, these people have been doing election for over 250 years, Femi. Yet, they are talking about election being stolen in God's own country. Remember the 2001 Senator Al and George Bush about Florida.
Florida, yeah. That was disputed as well.
So, I'm just giving you this. When you are talking of election, you should talk about the model being America. Okay. But America is having, so, and I also want you to remember the Cambridge Analytica narrative that came out in 2015.
Yes.
How some desperate politicians in Nigeria, engaged Cambridge to come and influence our election. Remember the allegation that Russian hackers were used again. So, there are several examples I can say. But what I'm saying, and coming back to your question, why should the manual results be more authentic than the one uploaded? It is because that is the one that has gone through the proper review channels. Like I told you, assuming without considering that there are issues with result uploaded on the IReV, the point is, whether one is lopsided or upsided, whatever, the one you are collecting from polling unit, the polling agent is also at liberty to do what? To follow through to the next collation point, to the next collation point, to the next collation point, until you get to the final collation point. And you see that at the final collation point, the returning officer will always ask the question, are there issues in your polling unit? Are there issues in your collation center? And all of that. Because At that point, you can still review the result before you make the final declaration. And I say this, election is systemic. Even today, we are talking of off-cycle governorship election in 8 states. Why? Because the judiciary reviewed the work of INEC and find them not to be optimal, not to have done credible work, which is why they overturned that result. And today we have 8 states
with rerun.
Senator Natasha, that is sitting in the Senate today, did not win through INEC. He won through the court. She won through the court, rather. It was the court that declared that the APC candidate that was declared by INEC as the winner of that senatorial, Kogi Central Senatorial District was not the rightful winner. So there are layers of checks and balances that have been put in place. But when you now put your faith in a technology that can fail, don't also forget that just last year, UTME.
Yes, it was a mess. I agree with you.
I'm just giving so that people watching will not say, Jide, what are you saying? I am in support of electronic transmission. And I like the caveat that have now been put. In the event that, peradventure, this could not be uploaded, and you want to go on with the collation, the results of the manual will be used. And that is fair enough.
It is fair enough. Let me ask you this, because the president too has weighed in through his special advisor. I'd like to read what one of the special advisors said. The special advisor to the president on media and public communications, Sunday Diary, said President Bola Ahmed Tinubu will take a measured decision on the electronic transmission of election results. His quote exactly is, "I can assure you that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, a renowned Democrat, will do what is right, but it will not be in isolation from realities of the country." And, that has gone on for a while. And people are saying, okay, so what will President Tinubu be doing with regards to this? What should he be doing? What stake does he have in doing anything at all?
Now let me give you this. I have this insight that every bill, not just this electoral amendment bill, every bill that is sent to the president for assent, he's not a subject matter expert on all matters.
No president is actually.
So what he does and what the law permits him to do, or her, even though we have never had a female president, what the law permits a president to do is that when you receive a draft, a legislation that has been brought to you for assent, before you put pen to paper, you minute that bill to the Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
Yes.
You also minute that bill to the MDA or agency or organization that will be impacted by that law. So in this respect, I will expect Mr. President, on receipt of this bill, to minute it to INEC for legal opinion, to minute it to Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice.
You mean the other way around? The Attorney General for legal opinion, INEC for electoral opinion.
For electoral opinion. But again, it will now get 2 for the price of 1, because INEC chairman also has a legal background. So he will understand, as a senior advocate of Nigeria, as an academic, as a professor, he will know when their hands are being tied and when they are being set loose. So what I'm saying is that is what I'm importing to what Dari is saying, that based on legal, let me give you one insight I had under Goodluck Jonathan. There was a constitutional alteration that took place under Goodluck Jonathan.
Yes.
But what happened? We had it on good authority from the grapevine that the president signed because he want to appear populist, only for the Office of Attorney General to caution me and say, Mr. President, this must not go out. You are signing the death warrant as a president.
Was it the one where
the Office of Attorney General and Minister of Justice was separated, Accountant General of the Federation? Those ones that were done. But you see, what killed that bill was the fact that it was one bill with several clauses that will impact on different areas of the Constitution. What we had on good authority was that the Attorney General at that time advised the president against signing that bill because it's going to whittle down his power. You get? So that is a classical example of how sometimes measured approach is taken. Because if if your Attorney General tells you, Mr. President, these are the implications of this, don't do this. If you go ahead and do it, it's shielded. Nobody wants to know, oh, this is the opinion of Attorney General. Let me give you this instance. Did you know, and there is nothing that Tinubu would do that anybody will hang him. It took 6 alterations before Buhari signed the last one. Did you know that? You were here.
Yes, I lost count at 4.
It was 6.
So 6.
4 in 2018. Then the bill was reintroduced in 2019, de novo, and then it without assent on the 5th time, and then the last time was the one he now signed on February 25, 2020. February 25, 20. So who were the people telling him not to sign those 5 previous times? It's the office of Attorney General.
Well, maybe President Tinubu may not get that opportunity because it's not always ideal to make large or impacting alterations very close to elections. We're in February, so it's about 12 months or thereabout, or less, if I would say, to elections. So whatever decision he needs to make it very soon and decide.
Which is why on Monday when I was on Good Morning Nigeria on NTA, I actually told our audience that I don't see how this Electoral Act will fly, given the timeline that I see, if strictly observed, INEC will have to roll out the timetable and notice of election by 25th, latest, by 25th of February. Recall that in 2022,
Buhari declined.
INEC released timetable and notice of election on February 18. But the president, Buhari, signed on the 25th. So it was a week lapse. So INEC now had to reissue the notice of election to now reflect. And that's when they now shifted the presidential election from initial February 18
to March.
To 25th. 18 to 25th. So 1 week shift. So what I'm saying is that President Tinubu is a sagacious politician, and every politician is selfish one way or the other. And while we are even debating and paying too much attention on e-transmission as if it's a game changer, there are other provisions in that law which many people are not talking about. For instance, the National Assembly wanted to reduce the number of days from 360 to 180. Hello, that was the problem we had before it was increased to 180 from 360. When people were saying, oh, Nigeria is a very huge country, 768 local government and 6 area councils making 774, then 36 days. How can a president cover all of this within 180 days? So they now said there should be larger timeline so that the president, particularly presidential candidate, can have sufficient time to campaign. Now, this same the lawmaker are now saying they want to take us back to the status, which why we need to think through all alterations. We cannot allow to be doing yo-yo with our electoral reform. So today is this way, tomorrow is that. Today, I don't know. I've stopped buying the Electoral Act. I've stopped buying the Constitution. Why? Because I don't know which one is even authentic any longer. Now, we have had about 5 alterations of the Constitution since 1999. Do you know that?
Yes.
Then we have had about, we have 2001 Electoral Act, which was withdrawn in 2002. Then we have 2006. Then we have 2010. Then we have 2022. Now, we don't know whether it's 2022 altered or 2026 that we have. And let me also say this, since we are discussing politics. I believe National Assembly was being mischievous. And you ask me why. 2 years they have been on this electoral reform. 2 years since February 2024. And I should have expected that the priority alteration should have been constitutional. alter the constitution first. You have seen, the last time I was here on this your show, I came to discuss reserve seat for Nigerian women.
Mm-hmm.
Will it make it? Will it not make it? Nobody knows. Assuming without considering that it makes it, there may be consequential alteration of the Electoral Act.
True.
So
it is the mother of all laws.
of course, constitution is the mother of all laws. Now, you are talking of Electoral Offences Commission. If you are going to pass that, you have to amend the constitution, which has already given INEC the power to prosecute electoral offenders. So you are withdrawing that power from INEC, you are giving it to an independent agency, you have to alter the constitution. And you know constitutional alteration is not the easiest thing.
It's not.
So what I'm saying is that if the National Assembly were not going to be mischievous, they should have prioritized and latest by June 2025 should have concluded work on constitutional alteration. So we then know whether it's 2 clauses that will impact on future elections, let me not even say 2027, then you can make consequential alteration in the Electoral Act. The way we are going about it now, assuming without considering that you now succeeded in altering, and let me give you the example of what now happened in 2023, which we are, the mistake of which we are committing again. The National Assembly, 9th National Assembly, passed the 2022 Electoral Act without passing the Constitution. Then they now pass the Constitution in 2023, shortly before the 2023 general elections.
I understand what you're saying. It's a quagmire because even now, if issues come up based on this Electoral Act and the Supreme Court has to rely on the Constitution, it's almost like whatever the Electoral Act did does not exist before the law. And
you know, in the hierarchy of law, the Constitution comes first.
Highest, yes.
So even when you have altered the Electoral Act, their lordship will be looking at consequential alteration. Let me give you more specific example. You know, you made allusion to issue of FCT. What's the status of FCT in the calculation of winner of an election? I was on Channels TV. And 2023, myself, Mokwe Ogun, Chamberlain, who was there? I don't know whether Sheun was there with me. Then they threw the question at me, and I was advocating for Nigerians need to understand how a winner emerges an election, that you need to score 25% in 2/3 of Nigeria, states in Nigeria. And I said, you have to score that 24% in 24 states. 25% in 24 states, which is 2/3 of Nigeria, 2/3 of 36, and then FCT. I recall very vividly, Mokpe said, Mr. Ojo, don't go there. This is a point of law. Don't go there. Because me, I was looking at the letter. I wasn't looking at the spirit.
Coincidentally, I watched that.
Oh, you did? Yes, God bless you. I said, Mokpe said, Mr. Ojo, don't go there. You are talking about the letter of the law. You have not talked about the spirit. And the spirit is what the Constitution, their lordship now interpreted. Recall it was one pillar upon which Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar was hoping that 2023 presidential election would be nullified. That Tinubu and APC did not score 25% in FCT. And what did they say? They said, look, the residents of FCT do not have a gold card. So, you cannot say mandatorily that any president must have 25% in that city, in as much as you have 25% in 25 states. So any state will substitute for FCT. And that's it. So now we need to have it in the law, that interpretation that the Supreme Court, because every pronouncement of the court is as good as having a law in place until it is set aside. You look at the case of Kogi. When Kogi's issue of Prince Abaka Bello Audu died midway to election, there was no precedent, and then INEC said, bring another one, and some people went to court and said, oh, Abaka Audu died with his vote. You cannot resurrect him, and the vote is done. But the legal opinion of the APC and then the Supreme Court was that, no, when you vote, you are voting for the party. No, you are not voting for the candidate. Then they reminded us of Amechi that they don't even stand at the polls, they don't campaign. Yet, because it was PDP that won in Rivers, he is deemed to be the candidate of PDP and he was inaugurated. So sometimes you and I, despite our profound legal opinion or whatever we say, their lordship will always have their own interpretation. Which is why I was talking about retime. Let's understand. Maybe you have to have an interpretative section in that alteration that talks about what real time is. But let's move forward.
I know we're pressed for time, but I actually wanted us also to touch on some very other subjects. For example, the US is adding more troops to Nigeria. About 200 soldiers are due to come to Nigeria. And, this time we know they're coming. It's not a situation of coming through backdoor, even though people have also said maybe there are more than 200 people that may come at the end of the day. Where are they coming to? What are the targets? It doesn't mean that Nigeria, who was excellent with ground troops, suddenly now has to have specialist operators that are from the US joining with the ground troops to do all kinds of things. And if this major movement just before the election, and the pushback against the terrorists could mean much more than we easily anticipate or can anticipate before an election. What's your perspective to the US gradually integrating more? It was one small area before, now 200 troops, and who knows what's next.
You see, unfortunately for Nigeria, you cannot cherry pick because he who is down does not fear fall. We do not have the technological prowess to deal with our insecurity. So we have to rely. The other day, the president went to Turkey and signed an MOU for military assistance with Turkey. And perhaps there will be several other countries we are going to have that with. And the truth is this. Look at even the whole of Europe. We used to think that Europe are very mighty, powerful. But look at the way Donald Trump is talking down on the entire Europe. I said, look, I will take this Greenland. Whether you people like it or not, it's better let's have a deal. If you don't allow a deal, I will still take it from you. And that has pushed him against his allies, Denmark and the rest of them in European Union. And that's to tell you that, see, big man not be by mouth. If you want to be a big man, we are talking of sovereignty, we are talking of what other things have I heard people saying?
Sovereignty, the idea of territorial invasion.
Territorial integrity and all of that. It's only people who can secure their borders that will be worried about territorial integrity. However, what I thought I had was that these 200 soldiers were to build capacity of our soldiers. They are more like trainers.
And you don't think it's a cover?
It may well be. But I think President Tinubu very much understood that if he doesn't deal with insecurity, that will be used against him in the coming campaigns and has the power to make him lose the election. I recall that Republicans in US have always been warmongers,
Yes.
They've always
historically.
They will always tell you, we are the one that can secure you. We are the one. You see, if you don't vote us, you are vulnerable. These people, these Democrats, they are weaklings.
They talk too much.
They talk too much. They don't do anything. And that's why they always won elections. So security is always huge ahead of every election. And if you are going to talk about where the president is not doing well today, it's in the area of security. Look at the massacre of Kahama. It bleeds my heart.
Yes.
Those people, innocent people in communities that are eking lives, living on cassava and jam and all of this, they don't even have mansion, they don't have DSTV, they don't possibly have electricity. And somebody will go there and slaughter them like ram. Now they are saying 75, 100 and something. The same thing all over. So, and it may get to us. Somebody sent me a message from Northeast and said, the people of Taraba are being gradually wiped out, silently. And nobody is talking about it. So, this issue of insecurity
but they've not been in the news, or does it have to make it to the news to be?
Yeah, because maybe it's done in a quiet manner, and their governor have defected to APC. So perhaps they. But we know. T.Y. Danjuma, General T.Y. Danjuma has been speaking and has been asking his people to defend themselves. But how do you defend yourself? Is it with catapult and machete and gun that you want to defend yourself against bandits that are wielding AK-49, AK-47? It's one thing to say defend yourself. It's another thing to get. That's why vigilantes have never been really very effective. We have Amotekun in Southwest. But how many people, when they went to Okeogun area and killed 5 on New Year, a few days into the New Year in Okeogun area, the National Forest Park in Okeogun, they went and killed 5 people. Those people were vigilantes. There were security men in that place. So what I'm saying is that the question we should ask is, should Nigeria turn down that offer? If we do we have elsewhere? People are warning the president, don't go to France. France is dangerous. See, all the former colonies of France are turning against their colonial master. And now you are going there for Medicare, you are going there to seek support. It's dangerous. So if you don't want him to get support from US, you don't want him to get support from France. Yet Nigeria does not have the capacity to deal with this challenge. So what do you do?
It's also possible that as against the US trainers, it possibly could be the times of they getting even heavier weapons, more drones, more technological advancements.
Exactly, and now how to use it.
Yeah,
so that's what I see. Because 200 American troops cannot fight this bandit. They don't understand the terrain. You don't, and they are not mercenaries. You get. If they were mercenaries, you may say maybe.
Why shouldn't we have used mercenaries at some point? For example, why I asked that question, let me refer you to an incident in Borno. Professor Abubakar Mohammed El Jumair, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering and Technology at the Nigerian Army University, Biu, Borno State, died in the custody of Boko Haram, right? Boko Haram militants, after spending close to a year in captivity. One would wonder, were there other options of how to get him out, considering the fact that it's a Dean of Faculty of Engineering, an intellectual, who could also be an asset if flipped by the terrorists. So one would wonder, are there covert operations that should start to come into a fight against insecurity? Maybe not all about soldiers, or about mercenaries and other forms of engagement, which may not be all on the table.
Well, you see, in things of this nature, it's not everything that should be in the media space. Insecurity or security solutions are not. You and I are ordinary citizens, but when you are look, for instance, the other day I watched Minister of Defense, General Musa, on channels, and he was talking about them not having any authentic information about that Brigadier General being murdered. The one that were alleged to have been killed by ISWAP. Sometimes, was it last December or January, when it made the round that they intercepted the communication and then...
I recall the story now.
One General Brigadier General Uba, that they don't have convincing evidence that he's been killed. Perhaps he's also been abducted, trying to be brainwashed to make him work for them. Because they said the ISWAP people would kill and leave the corpse, but they never saw the corpse of this Brigadier General. So that's still giving them hope that he may be alive. But let's look at the complex nature of... See, I've discussed insecurity on many media channels. And the more I discuss it, the more I admit that it's very complex. Take, for instance, the issue of kinetic and non-kinetic. Is the government doing well on non-kinetic? Do you think majority of Nigerians can feed confidently? Do they have jobs? Do they have hope? We are talking of renewed hope. Yet you have hundreds of thousands graduating every year, no job. Those who do not even have access to education are more dangerous. They can't learn skills. In the South, the saving grace for us is Yahoo, because that's
sadly so.
Sadly so. I'm not proud to say that. You know, I went somewhere a couple of weeks ago and I saw even where I lodge, some guys that are of shady character that, you know, these guys are into something. And you see, EFCC have arrested tons and tons and tons of them. But I'm just saying that sadly, it's like a mosquito breeding ground. The more you kill, the more you have. And that is also panning out with banditry in the north. So you arrest, you kill, you neutralize. That's what they will use. They said they've neutralized 1,006. You think that's a huge number, but thereafter you see another, you know, attack here, there. So now we have ungoverned space. If you watch the story of Kahama, that Waro town or Waro village in Kahama is 2 hours on bad road to the local government headquarters and 6 hours to Ilorin state headquarters. I watched the police PRO saying that they have a police post in that place. Police post that have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 police officers, maybe 1 rifle between them or 2. And these guys are coming in motorbikes, around 50 of them, with automatic weapons. They will run for cover now, you get. So even before help or reinforcement will come, because it's an hard-to-reach environment, it's not so smooth. And that's why many of our troops run into ambush. You understand? So I'm only painting the picture that it's not as easy as it sounds. In fact, when I listened to General Musa, he was saying that people need to show sympathy to Nigerian military. That in some places when they are going, somebody will have to be on foot with scanning device to check for landmines. He said because if you don't check for those landmines, all of the people who are going on that mission will be neutralized. Will just ride on a landmine and they will be blown off. So it's so tedious. So it's not like you run on a motorbike or you run on a APC, armored personnel carrier, to go and service situation. That's why they run into even that General Musa, the General Uba that we are talking. He went on a mission to save to fight the insurgents. And by the time he called for reinforcement, the reinforcement was coming late. So then we have a lot of ungoverned spaces. We cannot overemphasize that. Nigeria has a very large landmass. I've traveled. My first time of going to Zamfara, to Sokoto, by road, gave me a very strong perception of what northern Nigeria is about. You go fast speed, like 20, 30, 50 kilometers. You will not even sight one single hut. And you know that if anything happens to you at that point, it's between you and God. Only God can save you. Because you are not seeing people. At best, you will see cattle grazing and maybe 1 or 2 people. And then that's how huge, how ungoverned those spaces are. So, which also brings us to the issue of having this passage of state police law. That cannot be overemphasized. President Tinubu has said he's all for it, that he wants state police. So if you want state police, why are the National Assembly still foot dragging? Because by the time they pass that bill at the national level, it still has to go to the state for concurrence, and unless 24 out of 36 state House of Assembly supports that, and we need that state police law like yesterday. So a lot needs to be done. Our training institutions are in deplorable condition. It was only in December the president approved 200 billion to refurbish those. I don't want to be too specific so that people don't say, but I was in one of those police training centers in the Southwest, and I saw how loose that environment is. And that's why you are training the police. So a lot needs to be done. A lot has been neglected. I granted an interview and I said, part of the challenge with security is political economy and then corruption. The political economy of not wanting this thing to even end because it has bred billionaires through, the issue of contracting, procurement, inflation of contract, and all these corrupt practices. And I cited the example of what happened, $2.1 billion under Goodluck Jonathan that was diverted to his re-election campaign under Colin Sambo Dasuki as the National Security Advisor. Remember Alex Bade, who was then the National CDS Chief of Defense Staff, lost his life in a mysterious circumstance while he was going to his farm at Nasarawa, when he was about to testify on that issue. All of them all the top brass that were arrested on that case now, none of them has been successfully prosecuted. We are talking of $2.1 billion. That tells you the political economy and then the corruption nexus to how this problem has lingered.
Okay, but I just want to ask this last part of the interview as plainly as I can very quickly. The Ukrainian Defense Intelligence, UDI, they did identify 2 Nigerian men, right, as Amzat Kazim Kolawole and Umba Stephen Udoka, to have been killed while fighting as Russian mercenaries, I beg to say. And it just tells a lot about how Nigerians are leaving the country for things one cannot reconcile.
Jakpa.
Yes.
I read about it yesterday. It's very saddening. But what I also learned is that they were tricked by the Russians. Maybe there was a promise of offer of scholarship or something, that was how they left, only to get to Russia and be conscripted to go and fight. Russia is losing a lot of its troops to the Ukrainian and all of that. But, the media propaganda makes it look like it's winning and it's winning.
Well,
so perhaps these guys were tricked in under the guys that they were offered scholarship, and then they get there, rather than picking up scholarship, they were handled rifle and then sent to 3 months of training and then deployed. And that is quite sad, because I don't know what impact those guys could have made on the war front. For these are people who will not join Nigerian soldier, Nigerian army. But we also have quite a number of Nigerians in U.S. Army. So it's not entirely strange that you have foreign nationals in another country. So if they can even be there legit, because the offer may be so tantalizing that it's irresistible. People will tell you, "I'll die and I die." When you see what people go through, Sahara Desert, to cross from Libya to through the Atlantic to get to Spain, to get to Italy. That this is like committing suicide. You have heard stories, I've read books, I've read interviews of people who saw death like this, who saw as they were being taken, people dying, and they managed to escape, and they are telling their story, and somebody is asking you, "I can help you cross through the Mediterranean," and then you are still you, I don't even know that you have that experience. So you can just...
No, I'm just saying that's what they will say.
Yeah, that's what they will... I know someone who went through that shadow of death. So when you now hear them talking about it and you ignore it and you say, all that I die. If God has destined you to die that way, you will die. And who knows whether those 2 guys that were killed were not even lured. Maybe the offer was too irresistible, and they felt
otherwise. Yes.
They made. So it's made. So, but that's why I draw parallel. We should not be making any heavy weather about it. I know the Ukrainian authority was sad about it, but we should not make any heavy weather about it, because I know a lot of Nigerians, even top Nigerian musicians whose children are in U.S. Army, and they celebrate them as if they have won knighthood and all of that. So if you are in U.S. Army, you can be deployed to go and fight in any part of the world. And if you die, it's your own cup of tea. So I don't think it's something that should warrant too much of media attention. That's my own personal opinion.
I have to say a big thank you to you, sir, for coming on Volume with FemiDlive. Thank you so much.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Thanks so much for the honor. Thank you for finding me worthy of sharing.
Always. You always be on the top of the list for us. Always.
Thank you.
Well,
I hope
that's the
talk
show
to
for
you.
today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being part of the show. We're so grateful to you. I'm Femi Diamele. But don't forget to leave your comments, all right? What your thoughts on any of these subjects. Many of you do write and be excited about what you write. And it's been interesting following through with some of your thoughts on some of these subjects. Feel free to let us know what area we've covered that you have your own strong opinion about, which could be to agree or disagree. We would allow that to be. Thank you so much for being part of the show and enjoy your day.